Hey everyone, my name is Yarrow and you're listening to the Daydreaming Wolves podcast. Thank you so much for giving me a little bit of your time. I'm really excited to share this episode because I'm speaking to Emily Cross, who is such an inspiring end-of-life doula or death doula. And yeah, I got so much out of this conversation and I really hope you will too. Emily was one of the first people that I came across when I first got interested in end-of-life care and possibly training myself. And I had a session with her last year where we talked about the kinds of training that I might be doing, and so she's really helped me clarify the direction that I'm taking in with this work. And I'm just so eternally fascinated with what she's doing and how she's approaching this really deep and important field of work. And so please check her out. She's wonderful. She has YouTube videos. Her website is beautiful. She does a lot of different things around end-of-life care, but the thing that we talked about the most for this interview was the living funeral ceremonies that she's offering. They used to be local and she was touring with them, and I was like, oh my god, I hope they'll be in Scotland one day. And now they're virtual because, there's no other way of doing them right now. And I'm super excited to be participating in one next Friday on the 5th. And I'll link to that in the show notes. So if you want to join that, please feel free to check that out. I think this is for you if you really have space and capacity right now to contemplate your own mortality and you're excited about thinking about death, which maybe sounds weird to some people, which I totally get. But to me it feels good, because I think this fear is there anyway, and I am looking forward to being in a space with other people who want to talk about it together and see what comes up. So yeah, thank you so much for kind of joining me and coming along with this new direction that the podcast is taking towards exploring end-of-life, death, grief, loss, but also art making and meaning making. And I just feel like this year there's a sense of going deeper into these conversations. And I'm excited for that, and I'm really grateful you're listening. So I will stop waffling now and just share the interview with you. And I really hope that you'll check Emily's work out, and maybe I'll see some of you at the virtual living funeral ceremony. Thank you. As you know, I love it so much when my interviews begin with giggles. I'm speaking to the wonderful Emily Cross, who's running a business called Steady Waves End of Life Services. And I came across her work last autumn or late summer when I was beginning to be interested in training as a death doula and end of life work in general. And I first watched a video on YouTube and absolutely loved it, and was like, oh my god, I need to meet this person. And then we had a session, I think that must have been like maybe September, October, and eventually I did then decide on doing a training that Emily has also done. And I'm just so happy to be in touch because I think we share a lot of ideas and values, and Emily is doing something that I'm particularly excited about. I know I'm using this word a lot, but it's really true. Emily is offering virtual living funerals, and I hope to hear a little bit more about that in this interview. So Emily, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm really excited to speak to you.
Thank you.
Can you begin by telling us a little bit more about how you came into end-of-life work?
Sure. So yeah, I'm a musician. Have been for a number of years now. I do music for live music and also for TV and film and things. So that was my primary job. But around the year 2015, I decided that I would like to try to kind of find a side career to run alongside my music, because if anyone is a musician, they know that it is extremely uncertain career path, and I just was feeling a yearning to find another career path that can go along with me as I age and grow. And so that was in the back of my mind, but I wasn't kind of actively seeking. But I was driving one day and something came on NPR I turned on the radio and they were talking about death doulas. And I've always kind of been interested in mortality and these conversations around death and dying. I've made art about it and music about it, and it's always kind of fascinated me. And so my ears perked up. And when they were talking about end-of-life doulas being this non-medical presence at the end of life, immediately I was thinking, this is my job. Like, this is what I would be good at. I just knew it intuitively. And I became so excited by the prospect of this actually being a career, because before hearing about that, I thought that, to work at the end of life, you had to go do medical training, you had to be a nurse. And I'm really not the type of person who is comfortable around blood or anything like that. So I went home and I searched on the internet about end-of-life doulas. And I found a training program in my local area, and I signed up the same day, and I started there.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful. I love that you intuitively knew, even though it's probably not something that a lot of people have heard about or would conventionally consider a career choice, right?
Right.
So I'm wondering, like, what do you love about this work, and what was it like to get started? I'm sure there have been so many questions as you were kind of exploring what exactly that could look like.
Yeah, I think what attracted me to the work and what I really love about it is the connection is really the basis for this work, and being present. And I love connecting with people. I love learning about people. I love offering my talents to people who might need them. And by talents, I just mean like maybe music or holding space or cooking or whatever. I think that I just innately love to serve people for whatever reason. So that attracted me to it. And also I feel, well, people have told me that I have a calming effect on them. And people have also told me that I speak in like a monotone, which is really funny to me. I don't think I do, but so yeah, I thought maybe that would make it the work easier for me, because I feel calm a lot of the time, and I am able to kind of diffuse situations in that way, in situations where emotions are heightened and difficult things are being talked about. And I think also I'm really big on communication and honesty, and I am very passionate about people's rights at the end of life, and them having agency until the end and getting what they want and need. And also doctors being honest and communicative about the reality of the patient situation. So yeah, those are the things that I really love about the work. It's so simple, but it really does make a big difference, this communication and just presence. And, the more practical aspects of the work are fine. It all contributes to a sense of overall peace. I'm talking about paperwork and organization of belongings and things like that. But really the heart of it to me is compassion and presence and communication and love. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you. I also feel like even if we're not dying actively right now, or have been given a certain time or a diagnosis, or we're really old, it's really beautiful to work with a doula to just explore our own understanding of death and dying and what our wishes are. Actually, maybe especially when we're young and have technically no reason to do that. So is that also part of your work?
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually have had quite a few clients who who are young and or not dying or have a terminal diagnosis or anything, who just want to talk about it. And I love that. I love doing that so much because I have seen how powerful it can be to contemplate mortality in a real way, even, at any stage of life, regardless of health and age. And I know for myself, it's made my life so much better just thinking about death more, so much more fulfilled and happy and calm to be surrounded by these conversations about end of life. And so, yeah, that's a big part of my work too.
Yeah, I feel the same. Like, I just really feel a lot more peaceful, and a lot more resilient around grief now that I've been thinking and working with death a lot more. Something that really fascinated me when I first came across your website was that you're offering living funerals, and I would love to talk about the group ones that you're offering in a moment. But the other thing that you're also offering is living funerals for people who are going to die probably quite soon.
Yeah.
And that was really like, I just became so emotional about that, and was like, wow, this is so beautiful. And I really wish that this is on my radar. And if that happened to me, if I was in a situation where I needed to say goodbye, I would so love to work with someone who can help me think about how I can do that in a meaningful way and how I want to spend my time, and what my wishes are. But also I was thinking like, wow, to spend the day and evening with all my loved ones, and then for that to be this moment where we're all going to say goodbye and know that maybe some of us will not see each other again ever. That feels so big. And I was just like, wow, Emily, how are you doing that? Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I just think it's such a gift to give, not only, I'm speaking from a client's point of view, like if I was dying, I feel like it would be such a gift to myself and such a closure and such a beautiful experience, but also a gift for my family and my friends and, people that have affected me throughout my life. Because I think everyone wants to say goodbye in some way, and how amazing if you can set a date, not a death date, unless for people who are going through the physician assisted death, what are they calling it now? Right to die, where they take the medication. Not setting a death date, but saying, this is our chance to say goodbye. This is our chance to form one last beautiful memory together while we all can. Just what a gift to have that for people, for your family, and also for yourself. And I wish that it was a more quote unquote normal thing to do, because I really think it's a wonderful opportunity to say things that you want to say to the person, to express love, express gratitude, and to just have fun. Death is a normal part of being a human. It's maybe the most normal thing about being a human, aside from being born. And we have all of these celebrations for everything else, for births, for birthdays, for holidays. Why not have one last goodbye party as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wonder, to kind of like ground and illustrate that even more, what kind of things do people like to do at their end of life living funeral celebration?
Well, it's very personal for each and different for each person, but in general, it really is just kind of like a party. So the person who's dying would choose, maybe some food to have, pick a theme. People will come and maybe not bring gifts per se, but like cards or things that the person can keep in their room until they do die. But there is a theme of open sharing a lot of the time. So, a public forum, if you will, to express gratitude and love for the person who is dying. So that is maybe the most moving aspect of the whole thing. Generally, it's like the person is sitting surrounded by friends, and people will just literally be showering them with love and words of gratitude and emotions. And a lot of times pictures are looked at, like slideshows and old videos and things like that. Drinking and partying and music and dancing. It's a party. It's a lighthearted party with intense moments of gratitude and love, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, so you're also offering these for people who just want to be in that space and really explore their own mortality. Can you tell us a little bit more about those and how they're now online?
Sure. Yeah, so I first came across this idea of group living funerals when I was just, browsing around online, as you do, and I came across these Korean mock funerals. So in South Korea, they have a bad problem with suicide, a high suicide rate, and this company over there created this experience, this living funeral experience where, and it's geared towards workers. So the workforce, the companies will bring their workforce into these like 5-hour workshops, essentially, on a large scale. So there's 50, 60 people in the room. And anyway, this short documentary showed these coffins in the room, and these people in robes and sitting down and saying their last words and all this. And I was just absolutely captivated. I wanted to do one so badly. I thought it was fascinating and such a good idea. And so that began my quest to find one that I could go to without going to Korea. I would have gone to Korea, but I don't speak Korean, so it would be a little tricky. But anyway, I couldn't find anyone doing them in the United States or any other English-speaking country. And so I don't know what came over me, but I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna go ahead and do this. So I was watching these videos and reading these articles about this mock funeral, and the whole point really is to reframe your mind. So you're going through this death visualization with all these other people. So it's very a solo journey, but you're surrounded by people, and the people are, not your family or anything. This is just for you, a visualization exercise for you, and you just happen to be doing it with all these other people at the same time. So I watched that. I tried to kind of get a feel for the things that they do, like the flow of the ceremony, what they talk about, what they do, and then adapt it for a Western audience and something that I could create by myself, and maybe make bigger and travel with as well. That was my whole vision. So I spent a couple months. I got a loan from a friend to buy the supplies that I needed, and developed a script and trial and errored with friends, and eventually had my first funeral ceremony with a group of friends. And from then on, I've just been doing them like crazy, and I've at this point trained a bunch of people all over the world how to carry these out. And man, it's changed people's lives. It's incredible because it's so simple. Basically, they just go in and sit down at their own memorial, and they have their memorial photograph. And instead of coffins, I use shrouds because, well, for one, I don't have a dedicated room that I can fill with coffins, and people just come. I have to travel around and rent spaces, so coffins were not practical choice. So I use shrouds instead of coffins, and they sit down and they contemplate their mortality through the script that I read, and then we do a last words writing exercise, and then without saying too much for people who might want to experience this, you're led through a meditation where you visualize your body shutting down, and I guide, or any practitioner guides them through the dying process, and then they are covered with the shroud and they lay, quote, dead for a period of time, and then we guide them back up through to life again. And so it's a very simple few-hour process, but actually intentionally going into a space, looking at your memorial photograph, envisioning that this is the last piece of paper you ever have access to communicate your thoughts and desires and wishes and goodbyes, and then doing this visualization and meditation really has a way of touching a part of your psyche that cannot be touched by just, or it's more difficult to be touched by just thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna die, or you live like you're gonna die tomorrow. Like, we hear all these things all the time, like in passing, and we all know, but for some reason intentionally sitting and looking at your memorial and being covered by a shroud, it just really has a way of hitting home. And so it changes people's lives. I mean, and they do it themselves. They are doing the work. We are simply giving them an opportunity to be in the space and more intensely focus on that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I really love the feeling of it being really non-dogmatic and empowering, because like you said, people do the work themselves and they can go as deep as they like or feel that they can, and they're just being held and facilitated in that process. But then it is super individual, and I'm sure that people have really different experiences, but they're also in a group and then have the space to reflect together. And
yeah,
I really love the video that's on your website, which I would love to link to in the show notes, because I think, yeah, that video is such a beautiful gateway for someone to really kind of feel into what that might be like. And I can imagine that many people feel nervous about maybe saying yes to it. I'm super ready. I hope we can do. But yeah, like if anyone is listening to this and feeling interested but a bit unsure, I really recommend watching that video, because it made it so much more tangible for me. And yeah, that's really beautiful. Can you say a little bit more about how you're offering these online now and how that's different, or what people can expect from that?
Yeah, so when this whole pandemic and lockdown began, I knew that I still wanted to be offering these living funerals, and perhaps people need them more than ever now. So I really worked very, very hard to bring them online, which was, to be honest, kind of difficult to figure out how to do, because it is such an in-person experience in my mind, and that's obviously how it was created. And so to transition into a virtual space was, it was difficult to think about. But I think that, it's been absolutely amazing. I can't believe how effective it is still. It blows my mind. So I just altered the script a little bit. And really the big shift is that more of the power of controlling this space obviously is in the participants' hands. So the biggest key was to develop a PDF that details how to set up a space, how to create sort of an effective memorial for yourself as a participant, because that power is out of my hands. Because normally, obviously, I would set their spaces up and have their picture, but it's been really neat to kind of work through advising other people how to create their own sacred spaces and their own memorial altars, if you will. So that's the biggest piece. The biggest shift was just figuring out how to empower other people to create something that would go alongside this virtual living funeral. So participants will get this PDF, and they will have instruction on how to set up that space for themselves. And then also the technology aspect was tricky, because we're doing it over Zoom, And there's a whole bunch of things I could say about it. So, you know, the feeling of togetherness within a room, I'm trying to bring that to the virtual space. So, obviously there's going to be a little bit of a disconnect because we're not all in the same room. We're not all feeling the same energy in the room. And there's technical issues like audio issues and video issues, but all together, it's been, I mean, just amazing. It's a different experience, but a similar, maybe this same or maybe even more profound outcome. So yeah, people can sign up through the site. I have different practitioners offering spaces for these, and you can just sign up online and you're emailed the information and the Zoom link, and then we proceed to do the living funeral in your own home or your own space, and then we meet up at the end, just like in person. We meet up to talk after it's all over in the virtual space, and those conversations have been remarkable at the end.
Yeah, I can imagine, and I really relate to what you're saying about the complexity of creating online spaces. I think in some ways it's so beautiful that we can connect with people across time zones and no one has to leave their home, which is a barrier to some people. Maybe it's also more affordable if we do it on Zoom. But then on the other hand, there's something so beautiful about being able to see other bodies and co-regulating our nervous systems in the same space, and then maybe even hugging each other. Like, oh my God, that feels so far out right now. I really miss hugs so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm so glad that you're doing this work, because I think, obviously, I don't think that anything can really take away the fear of death completely for people, maybe.
Right.
Actually, I don't know if that's true. Maybe there is a way, like, I don't know. Anyway, but I really see in myself that the more I know, the less I'm scared. And I think with this pandemic, there's so much uncertainty, so much that we don't know. So often such a sense of powerlessness when we're not, I will say this very gently, but we're not in resonance with how our governments are handling the situation.
Right.
It just feels really vulnerable to feel powerless and to not know how long this is going to last, when we'll be able to reconnect again in person and all that. So I think now is a really good time to think about death, and when we're able to and have the space to confront those fears and go a little bit deeper, maybe do some unpeeling. So yeah, thank you so much for doing that work. This is maybe a question that could be really big, but it could also be really small and beautiful, and both is great. So I'll just leave you to take this wherever you like. But I wonder, like, what do you wish more people would know about death and dying?
Oh gosh, I see what you mean by big question or a small question. I think you're so right that the more you know, maybe the more comfort you can feel surrounding the topic. That's certainly true for me. I think that education is a huge part of alleviating anxiety surrounding the topic. Like, I get questions all the time, like, what's it like to not be afraid of death? And I say, I don't know where you're getting that. Like, I am afraid of death still. Of course, we fear the unknown, and no one can tell us what death is like, right? So the things that we can do are educate ourselves surrounding death and dying. So I'm talking about very, very simple things like, what can we do to just prepare to make it easier for our family and friends and ourselves? What can we do to educate ourselves about what actually happens to a body when it dies in certain ways? What can palliative care offer us if we're anxious about that at the end of life? Because palliative care has come so far in a short amount of time in terms of medication management and keeping us comfortable without having us lose our sense of here-ness or our what's the word I'm looking for? Our wherewithal. So I would say I wish that people knew how many resources are out there for education surrounding death and dying. And also I want to say that I wish more people knew that they don't have to be embalmed, and they can have a beautiful home funeral. They can have a long goodbye. They can spend time with their loved ones who have passed. They don't have to hand that over to a professional. I think having professionals involved, like a doula, who can facilitate in these rituals and home funerals, obviously that might bring a great deal of comfort. But I wish that more people knew that they can take more control over the death experience, and there are lots of resources to help and assist along that road.
Yes, I totally agree. When I first learned about what embalming actually is and what the alternatives are, my mind was completely blown. And
Me too.
yes,
Yeah.
I'm currently reading a book called The Natural Death Handbook.
Oh, that's so good. Such a good book.
Yes, so good, so good. And it goes into a lot of detail that some people might feel a bit weird, but actually I'm so excited in a geeky way about it. I'm just like, whoa, this is what you can do at home with ice packs, and
Yes.
this is the footprint of different ways of handling a dead body. And
yeah.
then kind of learning and looking up all these websites for natural burial sites in the UK has been really exciting. And so yeah, I think that's really beautiful. And then also having a framework, I think, to be led through the process of making one's own arrangements and putting things in order and thinking about an advance directive and that kind of stuff, I think is so soothing, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think if people can become empowered and feel like they're in control of the situation, that would make a lot of people feel a lot better about the whole situation. And yeah, I think the majority of anxiety just comes from not knowing what's going to happen or not knowing how to deal with something. And it really is possible to become to have a handle on it,
Yeah. I could really talk to you forever, but I want to respect your time and also the listeners' time. And I would love to maybe speak to you again later in the year and have a second interview to go a little bit deeper. But before we go, I would love to know what you're currently offering and where people can find you.
Yeah, so my main website, where you can read about me and what all that I do and all the services I offer, is called Steady Waves EOL for End of Life. So you can go to steadywaveseol.com, and my email's there and everything. But at the moment, I'm very focused on these virtual living funerals. So I've just built a website called virtuallivingfuneral.com, and you can and that's also linked on my main website if you'd like to just check out both. But yeah, so steadywaveseol.com and virtuallivingfuneral.com are my main websites. And if you're in the US, you can just call me if you'd like. My phone number is on my site, and yeah, or email is great too.
Oh dear, I was muted just now. Oops. You're so brave to allow people to call you. I would be way too anxious to put my phone number someone have like real moments on the phone, but please, a great idea.
I love connecting on the phone. There's such a sense of like anything can happen.
Yes, exactly. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's fun.
Well, thank you so much for sharing today and for inviting actual phone calls. I'm really excited, like I said, to be connected to your work and to learn more, and really grateful that we got to talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.